Hello, everyone, and welcome to our recording on targeting and visualizing metrics. On today's agenda, the discussion of data and set metrics for providers and practices under consideration for the diabetes accreditation is what we'll be looking at today. The information shared today will provide physician-level data on key performance indicators for diabetes mellitus and cardiovascular metrics. What are we doing? We are looking at metrics because the health system is looking at a grant to grant diabetes accreditation to the physician's practice with the best metrics for their diabetic patients with and without cardiovascular disease. The accreditation will mean bigger bonus pools for the practice who has the best metrics and the largest number of patients whose outcomes fall within the defined targeted clinical guidelines. The physician data reveals which performance measures for care are adequately hitting or exceeding the established targets or are below par. So what are we looking at? What are the required performance measures to meet or exceed? The first one we'll look at is blood pressure. The next one is eye examination, A1C or hemoglobin A1C, LDL testing, and smoking cessation. These are the metrics that have been provided for the providers to do for their patients to make sure that they are meeting clinical guideline standards. So what is the data composition? We saw what the measurements were, and those are depicted on the left side of the screen, 1 through 5. And on the right side of the screen, we have a target for each metric that has to be hit for each year. So in year 2016, for metric blood pressure, the target was 1.8. In 2017, the target will be 4.5, and so on. And each metric has its own target. Now, what will happen is that each physician is given a rate, which is the performance measure attained by the number of patients who successfully meet the criteria for the metric. This is divided by the total number of patients considered for the metric. If the metric is higher or equal to the target, then this meets the desired metric. If it is lower, then this gives a lower rating, and then it misses the metric. So, who are we looking at? Who are our stakeholders? Our stakeholders are at the provider level. You'll see the names underneath the practices. There are 4 practices depicted here. Practice 1, Practice 2, Practice 3, Practice 4. The first practice is Androscoggin. The second practice is Hancock. The third is Lincoln. The fourth is Penobscot. And underneath each practice, you will find the providers. So, a perform example visualized will be eye exam for each provider. If you're looking at the eye exam for each provider for the year 2016, you'll see the provider's name on the left, and then the eye exam for the measure, the year 2016, the practice, the rate or the target that they're supposed to hit, 120, and then the rate that each one has attained. And on the very left, you will see if they have a high, low, or if they absolutely missed the performance altogether. So that is what we are looking at in an Excel form. So now let's look at this data in a little different way. The performance visualized in this sheet, which you cannot really see all that well on the slide, but if you play with it, and we'll have you come up and play with it after the presentation so you can actually see how the data moves and breathes with you. Embedded in this data are each of the metrics depicted by color. And so at the top, what you see is the practice, and underneath that, you see all the names of the providers. On the very left-hand side of the screen, you will see a rating for each provider and how they rate against each other. embedded in each of the colors is a measure, along with the target that you can see is the number. So the orange at the very top is the blood pressure check. The lavender is the eye examination. The purple is the A1C, and the gray is smoking attestation or assessment and counseling. And if you look a little bit further, you can look a little bit deeper into the data. And what it shows, when you hover over the data or each color, you'll see not only the target, but then you will actually see the rate as well as the year, the provider, and the practice, and the measure, and what they were rated. So if you look at what Dr. Talmadge did in the Lincoln practice in the year 2016, the target for eye examination, which is the same data we were looking at previously, is 7.20. His rate was 5.15. So he fell a little bit below the metric that we were looking at for this doctor. And if you hover over the lavender for any of the others, it will show you the same information. We invite you to come up and do that after the presentation is over. Another way to look at this data, maybe you can see it a little better, is the performance visualizing using a line bar. And what you see is the blue bar is their actual rate, and the little black line is the target. So as you can see, for New Canada, his rate for A1C, he actually, for 2016, you can't really see the date unless you look at it, but for 2016, at the top, he was right at the metric, and for 2017, he fell below because he's behind the black line. And we'll look at this a little bit deeper in the next slide, and you'll be able to see with the smoking attestation, New Canada, for 2017, he actually exceeded the target because the target was 4.25, but the rate was 5.0. So he actually did really well in 2017. So that is how we will be looking and assessing our providers. And at the same time, the last slide, in conclusion, you will see that overall the rates are being hit for 2017 because that is going to be on the right in each of the little cells. 2016 is on the left, 2017 is on the right. We're making vast improvements with our providers hitting their metrics, and thus so we have received the accreditation for our practices, and you can look for further improvements. We invite you now to come up and make the comparisons for yourself, and we want to thank you for attending our lecture.